that was one of those moments where I'm like, I'm a monster. I am a horrible, horrible human being. So
Yeah.
that was one of them. That was one of them.
Yeah.
There were other times in my life where I just realized that you're awful, and this is not who you were meant to be. And
Welcome back to season 2 of the Dare to Love podcast. I'm your host, Victoria Holloway, and you are watching Beauty from Ashes, where I have guests on to share how God brought them out of a terrible situation and turned it into something beautiful. Today's guest is Ryann Cushway, and he's going to be sharing his incredible testimony, so I hope you guys enjoy.
Okay, Ryann, so just tell me like a little bit about kind of how you grew up, your upbringing, how you met the Lord, all of that kind of stuff.
right on. So I guess the how I grew up starting off. I grew up as an only child, baby of the family. My mom and dad divorced when I was like a baby, and we were in Louisiana, and then we moved back to Georgia. We have family out here, so where our family's from. And anyways, I grew up with just her, and it was just her and I for the longest time. Was pretty shy, didn't talk a lot. I used to draw out everything. I used to write down like, oh, what do you want to eat? Oh, I do this, build Legos and stuff. But I was pretty to myself. I didn't have a whole lot of friends. I don't know. I was just a quiet kid. When I think around 5th or 6th grade is when I actually started getting into some fights and started having some issues. I had a couple of guys that were like my arch nemesis, and we would always fight. And I think that was when I really started having anger issues. And I'd always kind of been like bounced around from family member to family. My mom being a single mother, she was still trying to live her life. She was still trying to find, her Mr. Right in a world. So I spent a lot of time with my grandparents and my aunts and uncles and my cousins. And it's weird. It's weird finding out different things as an adult versus when I was a kid. I always thought that, I was just kind of like, just like, hey, watch Ryann, or can Ryann hang out with you guys for a little while? And because I was always like feeling like I was being bounced around, but, finding out later that my cousins and everything, they were always offering. They were like, hey, we'll take Ryann, let's bring Ryann over. So it wasn't so much that I was a burden to anybody, but I was like being shared with the family. But as a kid, I didn't understand that. I was just going here, going there. I really didn't feel like I had roots, So when my mom finally did remarry, she moved to Gwinnett, and I don't know, I kind of felt like I really just I could be anybody. I had always been kind of quiet and kind of shy and kind of felt like an outsider. And I wanted to, like I had told you, I really just wanted to have some friends. I wanted to be cool. I wanted to be popular. I wanted to date a pretty girl and have a little money in my pocket. I wanted to be somebody. And I had never really felt like that. So I started coming up with, how to do that, how to reinvent yourself. And I guess in today's society, we watch too many things, about being the hero, being masculine, being a tough guy or whatever. In the early 90s, everything was hip hop, it was Snoop Dogg and Eazy-E, and, it was Tupac. And so gangster rap was kind of like a thing. It really was. And I grew up with that kind of mindset of how to be a tough guy.
Yeah.
So when my freshman year, I kind of identified the local drug dealer, and I'm like, that guy, he's got money, he's got friends. Everybody loves him. And he's got a pretty girlfriend. And I was like, that's who I need to be. And so that's through conversations. That's how I got my start into it. And basically, he was just like, "Look, here's some weed. Sell this, and come back to me." And that's how I kind of got my start into that.
Yeah. So did you know the Lord leading up to this at all?
No, not at all. My mom and I, we had gone to church a handful of times. We would go for like Easter, we'd go up to Stone Mountain and we'd have like the morning service, and it was cool. It was a cool experience, just to be up there on the top of the mountain. The sun comes up, they sang some pretty songs, and there was a message. I'd been in church a few other times, but it's funny we're talking about this. One of my best friends, my only friends growing up, I remember going to church with him and his family one time, and this woman got up, and I think now that she was speaking in tongues, but at the time I had no idea. I just knew that this woman was going crazy, and it scared me. I was like, no.
Yeah.
And she was running around, and I ran out of the church, and I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I had this really weird experience with it. So I definitely did not know God. I didn't really even equate like, hey, there's a higher power or anything out there, any more than I knew that, He-Man came on Saturday morning cartoons.
Yeah.
So it was this, if there was a notion of God, it was almost like this fictional, non-tangible, irrelevant thing that some people do in their life.
Yeah.
So, definitely no.
Yeah. So in ninth grade, you started selling weed, marijuana. Yep. So what progressed from, just like a side hustle in school? Like how did it progress?
Well, it was so easy, and everybody, was smoking weed. And then it progressed into like, hey, can you get some acid? Hey, can you get some pills? Hey, can you get this? Hey, can you get that? And it just kept progressing, and it get more and more into where like, it's a business, it really is. And there's product, and you got to keep up with that. And there's sales, and there's clients, and you've got making phone calls. And it was full time. And I was trying to juggle this life of, hey, I'm a pretty good student. I make pretty good grade A's and B's. I don't want to be like the drug dealer. I don't want to be the bad guy. But the more that you get into that world, the more that you have to be. You can't be like, hey, I'm selling dope, high-fiving people. It's rainbows and unicorns. No, you kind of got to be a bit of a tougher person.
Yeah.
You're not exactly dealing with, Sunday school teachers when you're out hustling. So it progressed. And the more that I sold, the more that contacts I made, the deeper that world got.
Yeah.
And initially I was thinking, I was like, well, I don't do drugs, but somebody does, and somebody's going to buy them, and somebody's going to sell them. So somebody's going to make money. I was an American entrepreneur, I was making a name for myself. I kind of justified it like that, but as it progressed, it gets deeper, and the consequences get more. When you're 16, you're 17, you're riding around with all this stuff in your car. You're hiding it from your parents, and then you've got some friends who absolutely had no clue. Completely oblivious to the things that I was doing, the life that I was living, and that's when it's that balancing act of who you are. It's not like you walk around with a shirt that says, I'm the bad guy, so trying to juggle that. And that's where just a big world of lies started coming through, and who are you telling? Who knows this about you? How trying to make up, well, where'd that money come from? Or how did you afford these clothes, or what? There was all kinds of things. My some friends and I, we would go to the mall. We'd steal things left and right. We didn't care. And then to other people, I was goody two shoes. I don't know if anybody really here remembers Leave It to Beaver. Does anybody remember Leave It to Beaver? Like nobody does. There's like somebody listening.
She
to,
does.
So there's like somebody who's like listening to a podcast, be like, oh yeah, Leave It to Beaver. That's like 1950s. But do you remember? Hope, do you remember Eddie Haskell? Okay, so Eddie Haskell was like, he was the guy who would come around, who was like so super sweet to mom and dad, and they just thought, Eddie's, he's such a good guy. Mm-hmm. And then as soon as mom and dad are around, he's like, hey, let's go smoke cigarettes and steal things. Mm-hmm. And I was just living this double life.
Yeah.
And it started spiraling out in my head because the things that I was doing just kept getting worse, and the violence kept getting more, and the weight and the consequences. And I was just some high school kid. So it was, it was fun times.
Yeah. Do you feel like, because you said that, you grew up an only child and with a single mom, so do you feel like not having a father figure in your life really kind of put you on that path?
There was certainly a lot of anger issues about that. Anytime I would talk about my dad growing up, that conversation just got shut down. I remember different times with different family members, it would come up, and it was just like, turn the lights off in this conversation. Nobody wanted to talk about it. Anybody who did have something to talk about, it was just very negative. And it was like, all I knew was that my dad was this horrible person mm-hmm. who left us. And I didn't know why, but as a kid, you still kind of internalize that kind of stuff. You still I don't know. I look at my mom, and my mom is awesome. Yeah. This woman is beautiful. She is smart. She takes care of me. She's wonderful. Why would anybody leave? So maybe it's me, Apparently they had been together for a while and happy. They got married. They were in love. They got married. Then I come along and he's out. So somewhere in a kid's brain, how do they internalize that? I just grew up just being really angry at him. And, as an adult now and studying things and research things and going to therapy, that there is a lot that has to do with a young kid growing up without that father figure, without that role model. Now, I had my grandfather. He was incredible. He was an incredible man. My Uncle Jerry, my Uncle CT, my Uncle Lane, just incredible men who loved me dearly, who would do anything in the world and did their best to raise me, but it's different, mm-hmm. Not having that genuine father there. Mm-hmm. And I think that, that I was always looking for something. I was always looking to measure up. Had to be somebody because somewhere in my head I was nobody.
Yeah.
So maybe that maybe that did have something to do with it.
Yeah. So I want to kind of get into the hardships that you did face as a dealer at such a young age. You're dealing with a lot of people that really don't care anything about you. They just care about getting the product out there and getting the money back.
Yep.
So if you don't mind sharing just like some of those intense moments that you might have faced at such a young age.
I had started selling coke and had speed, and I had one guy that I would always meet. He'd always call me up, and he'd want to get some, and I'd meet him in different spots and everything. And this guy would always show up with like his a beat up car, and he always had his kid in the back seat, and his kid was like a baby, and I'm like, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, here you are buying, $100 of this, and does your kid got diapers? You got a pretty beat up car, your kid's out there, and plenty of times where it was cold, and I'm meeting this dude, and I'm like questioning if that kid is warm in there. So that was one of the things, and that guy. That was one of the, I get a phone call, I get a text one night, I'm sorry, not a text. We had beepers.
Beeper.
So it's funny. Y'all know what a beeper is?
Yeah.
So I get a page from this guy. I call him back, and he is holed up in a hotel, and he is threatening to inject himself with a needle. And he was like, "You turned me into this. You did this, and I'm going to kill myself." And I've got a note here basically to say it. So you're going to come over here and you're going to inject me. And that, yeah. So, yeah, trying to think in your head, like, what, what could be the ramifications? What if I don't show up? What if I tell this guy, whatever, and hang up on him? Is there this dude in a hotel with a syringe who's going to basically kill himself? Am I going to be implicated into it? And if I show up, how's this going to go? And I knew that I didn't want to get implicated. And, I was already not one of the nicest guys. So I was trying to think about how can I handle this situation. So I went there, and there was this chick there that was with him, and she opened the door, and he basically had the needle. And so I was like, I don't know how to do this yourself. But he got it prepared, and I had to inject him with it. And that was one of those moments where I'm like, I'm a monster. I am a horrible, horrible human being. So,
yeah,
that was one of them.
Yeah,
There were other times in my life where I just realized that you're awful, and this is not who you were meant to be. And that was one of the ones that was tough.
mm-hmm.
When the old saying, like, live by the sword, die by the sword. I mean, there were times where I wanted to die. I hated who I was. I would get ready, and I always try to, some part of my pride was in my physical appearance. So I would always try to look good, and, try to be attractive. But I would literally be just trying to get myself prepared, and I couldn't look myself in the eyes because it was this fake monster. It was this shell. I remember watching American Psycho. It's an old movie with Christian Bale, and he's talking about, there's a scene where he's looking in the mirror, and he's talking about, I do my hair, I wash with this, and blah blah blah. He's like, but I'm just not there. And I was living an existence of going to school and trying to be friends and have a girlfriend, and then juggled this life. And there were some of my closest friends on both sides of my life who had no idea what was going on, and trying to keep those worlds separate, trying to keep the story straight, trying just to stay afloat, and then obviously trying not to get caught,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to pass algebra.
Yeah.
So, it was kind of a really messed up time, like for a high school kid.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know you've gone to therapy and stuff too, but I almost kind of feel like you were really like a victim even though you might feel like you did all these horrible things, like you were so young, and there were people older and more, the adults in the scenario that were hiring you weren't taking your adolescence into account,
I mean, and no, there's you got some dumb kid willing to do something, for whatever reason. It didn't matter. He's getting the job done. Mm-hmm. And the truth of it is that at that particular time, you had a young kid, a young white kid who could drive right past a cop, and cops would never look. It really is. It is what it is. And for the black community, I mean, what happens now? People say it all the time. I've got friends of mine who are black, and they're like, "You will never understand what it's like to be a black man." And I'm like, and they're absolutely right. I was a white kid with drugs and guns, and literally driving right past cops and could wave at them, and it just. So going back to what you were saying, I was ideal.
Yeah.
And as those certain people kind of realized that, hey, this kid's messed up in the head. He's got an anger issue. He's violent. He's not a dumb kid. And I mean, he just flies right under the radar. So, I mean, it was a good combination to be a bad guy.
Yeah.
So.
So as you got like later on into high school and you're dealing a lot more, what was kind of like your breaking point in everything that you were going through? I know we talked the other day about everything. I know we talked about how fearful you were and all of that as you got like more in depth into it. So if you could expand on that.
So as high school is, is kind of wrapping up, it's like, wow, there's still this life outside of me. I think a lot of people, have that almost that movie mindset where, it's a 2-hour long movie and there's so much that happens to it. And then the movie ends, the credits roll. But, what happens after that? Where do these people go? And I had been living this pretty dramatic life. I mean, I'm on and off again with girlfriends, fights, drugs, parties, different things. And all of a sudden high school is kind of coming up on the end. And I'm like, I really don't want to be in this world anymore, and would like to think about college, would like to think about some different things about like moving on. And as I'm growing up, I'm maturing and going, this really isn't there. But on the same side, now I'm 4 years deep into this world, and there's new levels, new devils, and there was a lot more to deal with. Now I'm starting to move out. I've got some pretty close friends, but again, there's this other lifestyle that's just completely dark. Getting a phone call being like, all right, hey, I got to run to the store, or hey, I'm gonna go out with this girl. I probably won't be back for a while, and then just be gone for a few days. And in that process, doing work. Getting out after high school was still kind of transitioning, but I had kind of started saying, I don't want this anymore. I really would like to be something. I had in my senior year, I had taken an aptitude test or whatever it was. And, it kind of comes back with your different.
Like a placement test.
Yeah. An A to Z, like, hey, you place really high in math and, in science. And it was like, wow, all these different things that you could be. And I saw an anesthesiologist, and I was like, man, it was like $375,000 a year. I was like, cool, that's a lot of money. Chicks dig money. I mean, I'm already kind of in pharmacology right now. So, why not? So, what was it? Jay-Z has a lyric that said, I used to sell keys. I guess I could sell CDs. So, and I'm like, well, I sell drugs. Maybe I could be an anesthesiologist and actually. So I actually started kind of pursuing that as far as like schooling goes. And it's weird though. I woke up one day, I sat straight up, and I go, I am not the doctor type. I have just I'm like, you do not want this guy, being your anesthesiologist. So I kind of changed routes for that. But anyways, again, that's one side of life.
Right.
The other side of life is, being called. And that's when things started getting a little crazier, because it wasn't just selling drugs. That's where we started getting into some things where, hey, I need you to come over. Let's have a little chit chat. Cool. Well, what's going on? Listen, I need you to go with these guys. And there's so-and-so who owes some money. And go get it. Oh, okay. All right. So, and when you go to somebody and say, hey, you owe us money and you need to pay it, sometimes they say no. And I can't go back and say, oh, they said no.
Yeah.
Things happen.
Yeah.
And that violent streak in me, that became more and more pronounced. Fast forward what I was talking about, things happen and you go, I'm an awful human being. I am a monster. And this is, who am I?
Mm-hmm.
You know, am I this guy that, you know, that people know, that parents know, that, you know, is the good kid? Or am I this monster? Am I this awful thing? You know, you know, you watch movies and there's the bad guy and you're like, God, I can't wait for him to get killed. You know, I'm living this life day to day.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy. I've looked back so many times of like, how did it get so bad?
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Yeah.
It's something that slowly happens. It's one decision, another bad decision, an even worse decision. And at some point, you're kind of just in it, you know?
Yeah.
You stop quantifying things as good or bad. It's just who you are. So the image that I had of myself just kept going further and further. And I stopped caring. I almost kind of had said that this is just who you are. You know, you weren't the little kid, you know, who played with G.I. Joes and, you know, drew stuff and Lego cars. You know, that's not who you were. You know, you aren't the kid who got into fist fights in 5th and 6th grade and everything. That was, you know, you're not even the guy who sold dope or, you know, was this life. You are the bad guy. You're the monster.
Mm-hmm.
And the quicker you come to terms with that, the better this life will be for you, because you'll protect yourself. You just need to put distance between everybody else. And that was hard. That was hard because you stop caring. And like I said, I wanted to die. And from the kid who once said, I don't do drugs. I was like, drinking, drugs, like all the time, to the point like it was just commonplace. You know, I used to know this one dude who smoked so much weed, and we kind of made fun of him. But he said something to me one time, and I'll never forget it. He was like, the only time I feel sober is when I'm high. He's like, when I'm sober, he's like, I feel messed up. And I guess for me, the only times that I felt somewhat okay is when I was really under the influence of something. And maybe that was because I couldn't feel, you know, the substance, whatever it was, numbs you, takes you away, you know, makes it not real.
Yeah.
Man, but the sun keeps coming up tomorrow, and I just kept having to deal with that.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know.
Yeah. So tell me about tell me about how you met God.
This is the fun part.
Yeah.
So this is the fun part. So I met God because I held up restaurants. So armed robbery brought me to Jesus. So like I said, I had stopped caring. I was doing a bunch of bad stuff. I was just in a place of like, whatever, you know. Mm-hmm. And I had a guy call me up and made a proposition about how to hold up a place with some pretty easy money. And without going into too many details about it, I did the job, and it was pretty easy. And then, like a month later, I was like, we'll do it again. The kind of logic was, who would ever suspect doing it twice? I'm still here. I'm still this horrible person. Whatever. I don't care. And it's easy money. Except for the second time, it just didn't go. It didn't go as planned. And there was this dude that was there, and girls were crying. People were just freaking out. And this one guy, he just stood up to me, and I'm literally there in a mask with guns, and I'm pointing it, at this dude's face. And I'm like, get down or I'm going to shoot you in your face. And he was just lost up to me. Wow. And I was thinking, I'm going to have to shoot this guy. And I was okay with it. That was the worst part. That was a moment when I realized I'm going to pull the trigger and I'm just going to kill this kid. And he turned around and he complied. And I happened to turn around and I saw my reflection in one of the glasses that was there. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, this is just too much. I have done some really, really bad things. I have been in some horrible situations, and there's still questions that I'll take to my grave. But this has got to end. I'm going to end up dead, which I'm kind of okay with, or I'm going to end up killing somebody for sure. And that's not something I'm okay with. And I left, and I left, and I ended up driving to Lake Lanier, and I just went down by the bank, and I was just bawling, and I was just, this is not right. This is not what I wanted my life to be, and I can't keep doing this. I can't. This has got to end. And I cried out to God. I was like, it's kind of funny. I was like, look, I don't know if you're out there or not. I don't know if you're real, if you exist, if you like me, if you don't, if you care about me. But I'm like, if you are, if there is a God out there, then that means that you did create the earth and you created me, and you can pick me up and you can put me somewhere else. Like magic, abracadabra, And I was just bawling. I had a bottle of whiskey and I was just drinking. I was just I was tore up, and I was praying to God. I had a drunk guy just committed armed robbery, and sure God likes you. Sure, God's listening right now. And I prayed to Mother Teresa, because I didn't know how it works. I was like Mother Teresa. I was like my Uncle Jerry. I was like, my papa is Santa Claus. I don't know how it really works. I literally, what do you expect? You guys drunk, like Jesus kind of like this guy. But, and I was just a wreck. I did not see any way out of the lifestyle that I was in. I stopped caring. I just had kind of resided to, you're just garbage. You are just, you are that lowest level. And I had been back over at my mom's, and I remember that I was supposed to be going out on a date with this girl, and I was over at her place. I was over at my mom's house, and I happened to look out the window, and I saw this car go past. And I'm looking at this car, and it was 10 o'clock at night. And this car is going past, and it had the lights off. It was just like the parking lights. And I was like, we live on like this little one lane dirt road out, over in Duluth. And I was like, and I know everybody who lives on the street, and nobody's creeping down this house. And I was like, all right, this is it. I was like, this is a team coming through. You know, I'm a liability now. I'm losing my marbles. You know, I've been trying to get out of this thing, and in my head that this was it, that this was somebody, they were just going to come through. And I'm trying to figure out A, B, and C of this scenario. You know, if you're at your parents' place and you think that there's a kill squad coming to take you out, now what do you do? And I'm like, my little brother's in the room next door, and I'm thinking, all right, I know I've got guns in my car. I can go down, I can get in my car, I can go down through the woods, I can sneak up from behind them, handle business. And then I just have to explain to the cops and my parents why I've just killed Hitmen. Seems like an easy thing to do, right? Mm. So, or hang out in the house, let them try to come through and possibly take out everybody. You know, my mom, my stepdad, my stepbrother, and myself. Don't have to answer any questions. You know, the cops will put together the pieces later on, but that really wasn't an option either. So I thought, all right, just go open up. So I went outside. I went up to our mailbox, and like I said, it's like 9-something, 10 o'clock at night. There ain't nobody. The mail ain't coming. My mom always checks the mail on the way in. So the car had went down the street and turned back and was facing towards us with the lights on. I was like, okay. I was like, I know what this is. You know, this is game over. And so I went to the mailbox. Of course, there's nothing in it. And I turn around and this car starts coming, and I'm just like, here you go. Open shot. Done. I don't have to explain to anybody. You know, yeah, it's going to be a sob story, but, you know, I'm out. I am out of this. And I was perfectly okay with that. And the window rolled down and I could see something shiny. And at first I thought that that was like the barrel of the gun coming out. And I thought, okay. And then I realized that just enough of the light hit the car that I realized that's a Crown Vic. And I was like, they don't roll up in Crown Vics. That's a cop. And immediately I was like, no, the cops are at my parents' place. And it was like this immediate revelation, like, oh no, this is worse than a hit squad. This is the cops showing up at your door. And I was like, oh no. Fast forward. It's the details of that night. It was just seeing my mom, my dad's face as this cops, you know, just comes to the house.
Did they know anything, or were they? I
was kind of like, I honestly, I started panicking. I was like, cops are here. Shit, my mom and stepdad, my stepdad, he was a cop. So, and you know, it's a little backtracking. He had always been the one who kind of told me, he was like, boy, you're messing up. And he's like, I know what's going on. I know what you're into. You're going to break your mother's heart. And I was like, no, I'm fine. No, what are you talking about? No, not me. He knew. And I always thought I was such a disappointment to him. And he was a really great guy. He really was. I mean, he was good. He was good to my mom. He was good to me. He told me like it was, and I was just too stupid to listen. But you know, things went down, and then before you know it, signed, sealed, and delivered. They had guns, they had drugs, they had receipts, which is just a story in itself. Like, how did this happen? And suddenly there was almost like the sense of relief that came over me. I was like, this is it. This is over. You know, there is no more hiding. This truth is out in the open. I mean, kind of like finally, even though it sucked, because it was being revealed, it was like a weight off my shoulder. Like, mm-hmm. Hey, this is who I am.
Yeah.
And it was seeing my mom's eyes. That was hard, you know, for her, just crying, you know, just disbelief, you know, that not my son, not my boy, you know, seeing my little brother looking at me, just being like, because I mean, he knew. my dad, looking at him, my stepdad, and just that look of disappointment. Like, here it comes. I told you for a long time you're going to break your mother's heart. But for me, I was like, at least it was some kind of relief, Here, both those worlds, they just collided, and there was no hiding from any of it anymore.
Yeah.
And it was kind of done. And, and so I kind of rode that little bit of that momentary, I don't know, happiness. So I was getting handcuffed and, taken off.
Yeah. It was a way out for you. So.
Yeah. It was some kind of an escape.
Yeah.
I remember we stopped at, I asked him, I said, hey, can we get a pack of smokes? Going in, and the detective was super cool, and he was like, sure. So we went into the gas station, and I'm standing there, and my hands behind my back, and I go up, and I said, yeah, can I get a pack of Marlboro Lights?
Oh my gosh.
And she's like, yeah, can I see your ID? And I'm like, yeah, you're going to have to ask him. He's got my ID. And she's looking at me as I'm in handcuffs, and she's like, oh no, I'm so sorry. And I was just like, it is what it is, I was just kind of almost laughing about it. And she was like, I'll be praying for you. I'm like, cool. All right. Appreciate that. I'm pretty sure that's not going to, unless Jesus bumps through the door right now and poof, I don't think that's really going to work, but
yeah,
thanks. Fast forward, I get into county, and I'm in Gwinnett. So, I'm in there, and then reality starts sinking in that, yeah, you were really in some trouble. You were really in some trouble. And so my brain immediately starts going into modes, thinking, the airport's right over there. I know a dude who flies a helicopter. I know a dude who flies an airplane. I'm gonna coordinate some stuff, and these dudes are gonna come in here. I'm gonna be out in the yard. Helicopter's gonna come in. I'm gonna ride out. We're gonna drop me off over at Lawrenceville. I'm taking a little plane. I can be down in Miami in a few, and I'm out. I've got connections, and I was like, this ain't the movies. This is not Hollywood. This is not going to go down like this. This is it. And I kind of went down from laughing about it, being kind of relieved for an escape, to now mad about it, to great, now I'm here. And I remember in hindsight kind of thinking about it, being like, when I was praying to you, God, for you to pick me up somewhere else, I was thinking like Nevada or Utah, because I got friends over there, and not here. This is, you should have taken a left at Albuquerque, Lord. But it wasn't even Lord then. It was just like God.
Yeah.
And I was just like, man, I am in deep. And there was this guy who had came around one night, and I was in maximum security, and the max for county over there. And anyways, guy came over, and he said, hey, listen, if you need anything, I'm the guy I can get for you. And knowing what I know now about, jails and prisons and everything, it's kind of comical that he said it this way. But at the time I was just like, okay, all right. If someone comes up to you and says something like, I'm the guy, I can get you whatever you need. Some people are thinking like, oh, maybe drugs or protection or something, a shank or something like. And the only thing that came out of my mouth was like, can you get me a Bible? And this guy was just like, yeah, I can get you. He's like, are you a Christian? And I'm like, I don't think so. I don't know. I'm really not sure what that means. I don't know. I know I need a Bible. Can you get me a Bible? And he was like, yeah, I can get you a Bible. And so that's where I started meeting the Lord. That's where God had said, all right. And I know now excuse me, I know that God allowed me to go there. That was somehow, some way protected. And I was allowed to get there, and through the chaos, through the turbulence and everything, finally God said, all right, I've got you. Now I can talk to you. You know, kept you private. You know, I've kept you safe. I've kept you protected. You definitely not some good stuff. But somehow, and just the way that God works, he brought me to a place where I could not run anymore. So it was sit your butt down, boy. And that's where I was. And it was that's where I started meeting God.
Yeah. So, how old were you when you ended up in prison?
19.
19.
Yep.
And if you don't mind sharing, like, what were you facing as far as like?
People were kind of blown away about this one. I was 19 years old. I had 13 felonies and 7 misdemeanors. I had 2 counts of aggravated assault, 7 counts of kidnapping, 7 counts of false imprisonment, drug charges, gun charges, and aggravated assault with intent to kill.
Wow.
So
stacked.
Yeah. It was, I guess it's interesting that I was known in Gwinnett County Jail as like, there's a kid here who has more charges than he has years of life. And it was just like, man, you know, it was known that I had a violent history. I had a black card. So, you know, I was put into population with murderers, with rapists, with the other big boys. You know, this is serious. You know, it's not in here because, you know, you didn't get a ticket for jaywalking, so we're going to lock you up. No, you're in with the bigger stuff. So that was
how many years were you facing?
3 lives, 2 deaths, or 265 years in prison. As a 19-year-old kid, when you're looking at that, you're like, well, I don't have to worry about serving the full 265. You know, I don't think that's going to work out so well for me. But, you know, the 3 lives, I mean, when they do a life sentence on top of a life sentence on top of a life sentence, it's basically like, so when your first one comes up, you can't appeal and get out early. They're like, nope, you got to deal with that one too. Nope, you got to deal with that one too. The death sentences, well, Georgia has a thing called the 7 deadly sins, and armed robbery is one of them. You know, there's like murder, rape, armed robbery. There's some others. I can't remember what they are, but armed robbery is part of Georgia's 7 deadly sins, and I got 2 of those. So they absolutely, they could have said, we're going to give you the death penalty. You are obviously a person who is bad. You are a bad seed. Congratulations, you're a loser. Fortunately, God had a plan. Yeah.
So tell me about that as you start like reading scripture and kind of investing your time with the Lord. Like, how did all that develop for you, your relationship with him?
So there was this guy, Ellis, and this other dude, Country. And I really don't know what Ellis was in for, but Country was in for murder. And we started reading the Bible, and I don't think any of us knew what we were doing. We didn't know where to start. We didn't know, it's like, is this just like a regular book? You start off with Genesis and read the Revelations. I know there's like, you kind of got this division between like, this is the Old Testament, this is the New Testament. Where do we fall in? Do you just randomly pick? Because all of these are like little books, you know, do you just like pick one, you know? Bible roulette, I don't know. Let's start reading this. Yeah. And we just started reading, and we started going to church services. And Brother Kurt was the pastor that would come in. And it's funny. I've tried to track him down over the years, and I haven't been able to find him. But I remember he kind of looked, and I say this, and he's probably not going to ever hear this, but he kind of looked like a much heavier Billy Ray Cyrus. So, but I mean, he was always so just happy to be. This man was happy to be there.
Yeah.
And he genuinely loved us. He cared about us.
Yeah.
So we would go, and it was the three of us, and we just started reading, and we just started praying, and again, I had not accepted Jesus or anything. You know, I hadn't accepted like, oh, you know, you're my Lord. I really wasn't sure about any of that. If anything of it, you know, like I said, I've been to church a few times, but I'm never really the one to raise my hand, go to the altar call. And it was in there that, you know, Brother Kurt had started saying, talking about God, asking the Lord, you know, obviously you're a sinner because you're in here, but, you know, God can forgive you. And I accepted Christ while in there, you know. I was like, yes, regardless of where I am physically on this planet, in this earth, you know, you're still God and you're real. And I can't deny that. And I genuinely know that you exist. And I genuinely ask for your forgiveness. I know I'm a sinner.
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm an awful person. I know that I deserve hell. And if you send me to hell, I'm okay with it. I deserve it. Trust me. If anyone out there deserves hell, it's me. And God loved me, and it was so weird being told that, because as knowing the things that haunt you, the voices in your head, the memories, the things that wake you up in the middle of the night, just the echoes. God, do you really, you know, I know what your word says, but do you really?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I guess I started thinking that, yes, God loves me, but I just need to start doing better stuff. And I just need to like checklist off, oh, hey, helped an old lady across the street today kind of stuff, you know, like, look at me, Lord, I'm trying, you know, and I didn't understand how it worked. But I was trying.
Yeah.
And our little group, we were reading like every day. We'd go out on the yard and we would read. And jail's not the place where you want to be holding hands. You know, it just is what it is. But so we were holding hands and we were praying, and we were getting mocked. And it's kind of, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, you know, we were really in there with some bad people, but, you know, I wasn't exactly the nicest guy myself, and you're mocking me? No. I had went through psychiatric eval, and I was, I'm a sociopath. I was diagnosed as a sociopath. So, you know, a bit more than just randomly crazy up here. We definitely got some problems. And so back then, you know, God was working, and I didn't understand that. I was still trying to work through stuff of being that crazy person, and God speaking like, hey, don't stab him. You know, don't choke
renewing
that guy.
Your mind.
Yeah. And so some of the voices in my head that were before were being like, yeah, kill that guy. Were not so much that, or it was just like, forgive him, pray for that dude. It was weird, and I really wasn't sure how to deal with some of these thoughts and these emotions, because you have to be a certain type of way. You know, you're a tough guy, you're the bad guy, and now you're like being softer. It was weird, and being soft in jail is not the place. So our little group had went from 3 to someone else kind of had came around and being like, hey, you know, can I hang out with you guys? So it became 4, and then it became 5. And eventually it kind of kept growing and growing from just a handful of us out in the yard praying, and then on service nights to 6 to 7 to 8. To the guys who, you know, like I was saying, they would throw the ball. We'd be on the yard, and, you know, they're playing basketball, and, oh, let's be funny, and just, you know, chuck a basketball at your head. And, oh, that was close. Ha, ha, ha. You know, they're like, praying for you guys, whatever. And eventually there became more of us than there were guys playing basketball. So the guys playing basketball, they'd be like, hey, any of y'all want to like play basketball? We're like, no. You want to come read the Bible with us, sir? And they're like, nah. But we started getting a reputation as like the God Squad. And dudes would come up to us and they'd be like, hey man, like, can you pray for me? You know, I got a situation, blah, blah, this or that. And we were like, yeah, absolutely. We can pray for you. You know, what's your name? And started meeting people and like, hey, you just kind of come sit in with us, you know, just because we're holding hands, ain't nothing weird about it, you know? And we started changing, the dynamics of our unit from going from being like the worst unit of violent criminals. And we had like more and more people, Christians, because when we'd have services, you had to get out of your cell and book it to the room. Otherwise it'd be at max capacity and you couldn't go. And people were literally racing to get to service, you know? And it became something great. And like I told you, I really started having the best time of my life in jail. I was reading every single day. I was praying every single day. Our conversations every single day were about God. And, I read this. And did you see this right here? Man, I read this story and it was so cool. I'm like, oh, that's just crazy. It's mind blowing. And we were loving it. And, in the jail system, like you can write to like Salvation Army and there's all these different ministries and they will send you in Bible courses. And so anything and everything. That's another one. I'll sign up. Man, I've got a box, you know, like a legal box just filled with Bible studies that I did. And it's just all over the place. And I was loving it, just having a great time. It was, the food was horrible. You know, not everybody in there was cool. The guards were, for the most part, pretty awful. But we were criminals. So it's not like we were in Sunday school. So regardless of the good times that I was having, I was still in jail and I was still looking at 3 lives, 2 deaths, or possible 265 years in prison. And, that reality, it kind of fleeted every now and then. Again, going back to my escape, I no longer had to lie about who I was, or, I mean, this is it. This is your identity, bam. But that reality was still there, you know.
Yeah.
19-year-old kid. So, yeah, that's kind of
Yeah.
That was my day to day.
I think it's awesome. Just the turnaround that you experience spiritually. Like, if he could do it for you, he could do it for anybody. You know what I mean? I think that's like very inspiring because it's just like a encouraging thing to hear you share. But as you get through, you know, you said it's like the best time of your life as you're like going through the day to day. What was going on as far as legally, like lawyers and all that kind of stuff, like trying to get you through court?
Yeah, that would be an episode for my mom, just for her to talk about like how that, because again, we were, you know, Hotel Gwinnett, living it up, you know, having mystery meat sandwiches and revival. So I mean, it's kind of weird. It's legally, we had got a first lawyer, and my first lawyer had basically resigned to, you know, there's the guns, there's the drugs, and I signed a confession. You know, I was just like, yes, I did this. I was I don't know, maybe if you call me a stand-up guy, or you know, a guy who's like, yeah, I did it, I'm gonna take accountability, or a moron. But I signed the confession that, yeah, I did this. So legally, this is a pretty slam dunk case. Yeah. You know, you got a guy who is busted with guns, drugs, receipts from the place he held up, and he signed a confession. Oh, yeah, and there's people willing to turn state evidence on him. So, I mean, pretty slam dunk case. My first lawyer basically had said that you're going to get 10 years, absolute minimum. The best case scenario in the world, you're going to get 10 years minimum. There's no way around that. And that wasn't what God told me. I had been praying, and and I said, God, all these miracles are happening around me. I got to touch on that one.
Yeah.
All these miracles are happening around me, and what about me? What's going to happen with me? And just kind of like it was dark. I'm in a jail cell, and I'm like, lights were off, and I'm just praying. And this voice, just as clear as you can hear mine right now. I mean, just crystal clear. Wasn't booming. Wasn't James Earl Ray Jones. I tell people all the time, say they think, what's God's voice sound like? Well, you hear God's voice all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You hear it all the time. You just don't pay attention to it. But this was loud and clear. And this said before 21. All right. Okay. Well, God. Is that before 20? I'm 21 years old, before the 21st of some month, or before I do 21 years in here? Before 21. All right, cool. All right. Well, God just told me that I would be out of here. I took it as I would be out of here before I'm 21 years old. So, man, I slept great that night. I was like, cool. I'm going to be out of here before I'm 21 years old. I got some time to do. No big deal. I came out the next day, and I was telling everybody, last night I was praying, man, God, I asked God when I'm getting out of here. And God's like, before 21. I was like, what? And I was like, they're like, God's talking to you? And I was like, yeah. They're like, okay. Because here's the reality. You're a kid with gun charges, drug charges, confession, state witness. This is, you ain't getting out before you're 21. I'm sorry. That's not reality. And to talk about God's reality, to back it up a little bit more, we had seen miracles start happening in our dorm, our unit. And I think a lot of people think when they think of miracles, they think of miracles as Lazarus rising from the seas parting. That's a miracle. That's cool. Yeah, that's an awesome miracle. But you know what else is a miracle? Restored families. Another miracle is a dude who had no money on his books in jail and is just already in a horrible place and just doesn't have any. But all of a sudden he's got $20 on his books and he don't know where it came from, but he is jailhouse rich. He's like, man, I can buy some honey buns, man. I am good. I can buy some ramen noodles and everything. And that's a little miracle. Some of the miracles that we saw though, and I had told you about it before, was people whose mom and dad had written them letters like, son, we are so disappointed in you. We raised you better than this. And, you're just a real disappointment to the family. And I can't believe you. You just broke your mother's heart tonight, seeing letters. And I read these letters after the fact of where this comes from, where wives were like, you're horrible. I never want to see you again. If you ever do get out, you will never see these kids again. I hope you die in there. People that had no movement on their case, that couldn't afford an attorney. Somehow, all of a sudden, and it was just like this explosion of things started happening. That dude who had no money on his books, who was always going around trying to bum something and be like, hey man, I'm starving to death in here. They don't feed us nothing. Can I get a honey bun? Can I get something? And you're like, dude, I'm trying to survive in here too. All of a sudden he's got some money. It's the dude that didn't have any movement on his case. All of a sudden, he's like, dude, the discovery just came through, or this just happened, or something. A lawyer just showed up, or I've got an attorney visit. I've never even met this guy before. The letter from the mom and dad were like, you know what, son, what happened is awful. Yes, we are disappointed, but you're our son, and we're family and we love you. And we want to tell you that we're here for you. So, we're going to get through this. We're going to fight for this, and it's going to be okay. And the letter from the wife, saying, admitting to her own problems in this, her own effect on it. She's like, but the kids miss you. And, I told you till death do us part, through sickness and health. And when you get out, we're going to be a family together. We're going to start going to church together. We're going to get through this. And it's just like, man, all these, and dudes were getting out, and it was like, man, so-and-so got out. Did you hear so-and-so got out? I'm like, daggone, everybody's getting out, They got an open door policy up there. What's going on? So which led me to mine. It's like, God,
when's it going to be my turn?
What's going on? And so sure enough, when I came out and I'm telling everybody, like, yeah, man, I'll be out here if I'm 21. They're like, that ain't going to happen. And I said, you watch. I said, God is always speaking to us. We just have to listen. This is a great environment. I mean, a lot of people think, like jail and prison is awful. Yes. And it is awful. It's a horrible, horrible place. But it can also be a sanctuary, because they're pagers. You ain't got pagers. Well, in prison, they got pagers and phones now, but it's a different topic. But, you're not thinking about, you ain't got to go to work. You do have to get up and make your beds, because they will throw the lights on and drag you out of bed. You don't have to worry about your car bill, because all you have to worry about is your shoes, and your slippers. Yeah. There's so many things that you don't have to worry about. So jail became a sanctuary. It became, just this Zen place where I could just read, and I could focus, and I could talk about God. I could talk to God, and God could talk to me. Mm-hmm. Like I said, man, it really was great. I got baptized in jail. Okay. I caught pneumonia from it, but
oh my gosh.
I was baptized among 268 other guys out in the yard in February of 1997. And it was, there was ice on the tub. So we were out in the yard, and it was raining, and we're shivering, and like, we signed up for this, and we're like, I am so happy. And yeah, I got sick. I caught pneumonia. But I was like, it's awesome. So good. And I remember some of the guys that I was with. It was a good day in the rain, freezing, as there was ice on the baptismal pool. It was a glorious, glorious day. Yeah. Backtrack just a little bit. Some time has going by. And my first court date came up. And my court date came up on December 9th. And I said, there you go. That's my birthday. That's also 12 plus 9. Is any math geniuses in the room? 21. That's right. Here's a little backstory about 21. So my mom was 21 when she had me. She was in labor for 21 hours. I was born at 21 military time. I was 21 inches long. I was born on December 9th, which is not 21. I've seen 21s all over my life. And so I was like, look at that. I was like, hey, I even got, it's on my motorcycle, 21 on my bike. And somebody's like, nah, man, that's just somebody at the clerk's office is just having a happy birthday, loser, Yeah. And I was like, no, man. I was like, God's speaking. I was like, he's just, that's just a way to get my attention. Just let me know. Okay, cool. I was like, cool. Now, I really don't know if that really was God or not. It could have been a clerk, but I want to believe that it's God. Yeah. And then my court date came up again on something, and then it got moved again, and it came back on March 21st of 1997. And I said, there you go. God the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, that's 3. What's God's number? God's, devil 6, but God's 7. What's 3 times 7? 21. Boom. And people were like, that's a lot of strings. I mean, there's something there. I'm like, it's God, man. It's God. I'm telling you, God is speaking, and he's just doing it in ways. And I'm not trying to get into numerology or anything like that. But I mean, how many times did God use signs and symbols and wonders before? I mean, he used a burning bush. So I mean, why can't he use a court date?
Yeah.
So I was telling people, I was like, that's it, man. That's it. And I was confident. I was absolutely confident that this is the way it's going to be. Because God had told me months before that, before 21, and I had seen that number, and sure enough, here we are. So on the Thursday night prior to that week, and I don't remember, I never really thought about the date of what that was. But the week prior, I'm talking to my best friend on the phone, and we're getting ready to, it's getting close to being, area, lock it down. They love saying that. I love this one guy, lock it down. I hated that guy. I prayed for him. He would, man, God, sorry, tangent, but he would literally, when he would come in and when he was working the mornings, he would flip on the lights and he'd start singing like into the speaker, "Good morning, inmates." And I hate this guy, Jesus. So I prayed for that man so much. So I guess inadvertent prayers for him. Anyways, sorry. It's like almost 9 o'clock. I'm talking to my best friend on the phone, and they're like, "Cushway, you got an attorney visit." And I don't care how much money. We had the first lawyer, and when he was just like, no, he wasn't really fighting for us. We decided to get another one. That's where my mom would have to come in, because how she met the lawyer that we had at the time that I was released is a story all in itself, and it's pretty incredible how God coordinated all of it. It was really, it's pretty wild. But you had to interview her sometime. Sorry, can I get off track?
Yeah. You're good.
9 o'clock visit. And I told him, I said, "Hey man," I said, "I'm going home." He said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "My lawyer just showed up. I don't care how much money you pay a lawyer. They are not going to show up at 9 o'clock on a Thursday night. They are out having dinner with their fancy friends or with their family in their big, nice houses. They are not showing up to see you that late at night unless it's some big, huge news." Something had happened, and I knew it. So I mean, I was leaping up the stairs to get to the attorney room, and open the door, and I'm standing there, and Doug comes in, and he walks in, and Doug's a pretty tall guy. Obviously he's well to do, and he's just kind of I don't know, like he was slouched over, and he was like, "You might want to sit down." And I said, "No," I said, "I'm going home." Right? And he just looked at me. I said, "No, you need to sit down." I said, "I'm going home, aren't I?" And he looks at me, and he's like, he pulls out his chair, and he sits down. And he just kind of like slumps into it. And he's like, "Ryan, I have been in my office for the past 4 hours just thinking about this." He says, "DA calls me today, and he says, 'Hey, so we're going to let your client go.'" And Doug says, "What?" "Yeah, we're time served, some community service, some restitution, and going to let him go." My lawyer says, "Well, no, we're going to fight this. We're going to fight this. We're going to take this to trial." And the DA was like, "Are you kidding?" He was like, "Well, this is signed, sealed, and delivered." He's like, "Don't ask me why I'm doing this." He said, Don't ask me." He said, I don't know." He says, "But take the deal." He says, I had Judge Weingartner. Judge Weingartner, anybody in Gwinnett who knew Weingartner knew that he was the one who threw the book at people. The DA at the time, he was going to make a name for himself. Gwinnett don't play. We're going to take this bad guy and we're going to bury him under the jail. He had actually told me, that, it's like, let's see how was the words. It is scum like you that is ruining America, and I will do everything I can to make sure you never set foot on free grass again. Those words were from the district attorney of Gwinnett County. Awesome. Yay. Thanks. You know. And now this guy is saying, we're going to let him go. And I don't know why I'm doing this. And he said, look, if Weingartner doesn't have his coffee right, you know, if that man doesn't sleep right, he's like, your client is gone. And I'm not talking about life. You know, he could get the death sentence. You know, he could get the death penalty. And I mean, it's a possibility. You know, I could have been gone. And Doug said, well, you know, we're going to have to, you know, I'll have to talk to, you know, my client. I have to talk to Ryan, obviously. He says, well, we'll go from there. So there it was, laid out in front of me at just after 9:00 on a Thursday night. You know, the DA is basically dropping everything: 13 felonies, 7 misdemeanors, to some misdemeanor robbery. You know, it's the deal.
Yeah.
What do you do? What do you do? Now and this is this is one of the most difficult, hardest things that I've ever had to deal with, because in my heart of hearts, I believe that if I had stuck to my guns, that if I had really had the faith that I had been professing, that after all these miracles that I had seen, that if I had just taken it to trial, that some way, somehow, eyes could have been shut, ears could have been shut, evidence could have been poofed, you know, whatever. And I could have walked away, all charges dropped, completely free. What if it doesn't go that way? What if I'm wrong? What if I'm really wrong about this whole God thing? What if I've made up? What if I've been so desperate to look for things? What if I'm wrong? Mm-hmm. And here's an opportunity to take a plea and to walk. You know, yes, it's gonna follow you for the rest of your life. Every single time that I have to apply for a job, you know, there's little boxes that you have to check. And, you know, for years, I've had to do that, and I've had to worry about that. And, you know, as a professional now, I still worry. You know, if you pull up my website right now, there's a pretty quick little bio that's out there. It's public information, you know, that tells what is my employer going to see. You know, and I've told my testimony to a few people here and there, you know, and I've told it to a larger group at church, and I've told it to larger groups in jails and prisons for years. But it's different when you're in jails and prison. Everybody, you know, you're all the same. You know, I got charges, you got charges. But when you're have an employer trying to look at you, and you've got public knowledge out there on you, I wouldn't have had to do that. I would not have had to look over my shoulder. I would have had a clean slate. And that's the decision I was facing. What if, you know, if I take this to trial, you know, could it be wiped clean as snow? What if I pass on this, you know, and it doesn't go that way, and you were kind of wrong about everything, and, you know, for I know the way of the Lord, you know, and his ways are greater than yours. Beyond my understanding, what happens? And Doug says, he says, I need to know by Monday. He says, so think about it, pray on it, and let me know by Monday. And so for the next 3 days, I did not sleep. I drank coffee and smoked cigarettes, and I paced a lot. And I prayed, and I talked to God, and I prayed some more, drank more coffee, smoked some more cigarettes. And by Sunday afternoon, I literally was shaking like a leaf. I mean, physically just shaking, whether it was from lack of sleep, too much coffee, or just overload. And I was just broken. Mm-hmm. I was like, God, I know you exist. I know that you're real. I know that you've been speaking to me. I've seen these miracles firsthand. And I know that if I stick to you, that you will see me out of this white as snow. But I am so scared, and my faith is so small. And I was like, the what if, it just keeps bringing me back. And the voice came back to me again. I was walking. I was in the sun. I was walking through the yard, and the voice came back, and it was the same voice, but it was a different tone. And it says, "It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. I've got you. Go ahead, take the deal. Take the deal. It's gonna be all right. Just never forget. How this all could have gone down."
Yeah.
And I've talked to people over the years, and they're like, "Oh, I feel like it's a second class miracle. Is what I call it." And they're like, "It's a miracle all the same. God did everything." I said, yeah, but it was a reminder that my faith was not strong enough. And I know that it would have been entirely different. But God said, "Get some rest. It's going to be okay."
Yeah.
So I did. I went in and I slept. And the next morning I called my lawyer and I said, "Hey, I'm ready to go home. Let's take the deal. I don't want to go again." And my court date was set for, it was a Friday, March 21st, 1997. And that was things. And that was my plan.
Yeah.
There's more to it. I'm not sure how to spill what happens next.
I just wanted to say that before you keep going, I think it's cool that like you took an aptitude test in high school, that you're like a math guy. Like that's like your strong suit, math and science. And then God speaks to you through numbers, and then you said earlier, like God's always talking to us and we just have to listen. And a lot of times he talks to you like the way you listen. Like, for me, like I'm a creative person. So he talks to me through creative ideas and creativity. Like if I saw a number, I wouldn't necessarily pick up on, okay, God's talking to me through that number, because I'm not like a numbers person. So I think it's really cool that he talked to you in the way that you learned. Yeah. He spoke to you that way. So I think that's pretty cool, but you can keep sharing.
So, of course, my church squad, the God squad in there was like, "Man, this is pretty crazy. This is really happening like this." And I was like, "Yep." I was like, "I am going home." And of course, everybody else started having like the doubts too. Like, you got all these charges. Okay, yes, we've seen the signs too. We've seen everything out there, and yes, everything looks pretty. It's pretty hard to deny what's the way things are adding up. But what if it doesn't? And I was like, it is. And so I had money on my books. Thank you, Mama, for always taking care of me and make sure that I had my honey buns. To this day, I still love honey buns. Plug for Mrs. Freshly's Creamy Curls. They are the best in the world. We'll talk about creamy curls later. Anyways, I started telling everybody, I was like, "I've got this money on my books, and I'm not going to need it. I'm going home next week, and what do you need? Do you need some honey buns? Okay, here's some honey buns for you. Oh, you need some stamps so you can write letters. Here's some stamps for you. All right, here's a pack of smokes for you. And I really don't like buying smokes for you because it's bad, but we still smoked. Here's what you need: some legal pads, or here's some ramen noodles for you. What do you want?" And I was going through my books and I just wrote out everything that I could. I gave away everything, all my money. I spent all my money on supplies for my dudes that were in there. And, they were like, "Hey, listen, if things don't really work out for you Friday, then, we'll give you the stuff back." And I was like, "Nah, man, it's going to. Absolutely, for 100% sure. I'm going home Friday, 21st. And I wrote down out my books till I did not have, I had 18 cents left, 18 cents. And there was nothing else that you could buy for 18 cents. So I had 18 cents left. So I said, okay. So, and you had to put in for store on Monday. so that they would go through and that you would get it on Wednesday. Anyways, Tuesday, the clerk's office, the judge's office, calls my lawyer and says, "Hey, listen, Judge Weingartner has something to do on this day. Can we move your court case? Can we move your case to Thursday?" Theoretically, I mean, maybe if you had like some testimony or people flying in or whatever like that, it could have been a big deal, but whatever. But I was like, no, I think we're ready to go. We can do Thursday. That's fine. So, what was Friday's date?
21st.
What was Thursday's date?
The 20th.
Before 21.
Yeah.
So I was like, bam! I'm like, come on, man. I was like, how do y'all not see this? And so, sure enough, on that Thursday, went in and they read out all my charges and they're like, "How do you plead?" And I was like, "Guilty." And for a moment, my heart stopped as I said those words. How do you plead? Guilty. I am guilty as charged. I did that. There is a consequence. There is a cost for your actions. And as I stood in that courtroom and I looked at that judge and in front of all those people, I said, I am guilty of that. I mean, that was a moment that you'll never forget. You are owning up to it. And the judge says, "Okay. All right, ask for the prosecutor, what do they suggest?" And it's the time served, community service, restitution, yada, 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 and everything. And this part was kind of a little blurry because, I just kind of wasn't really, man. And he was like, "Okay, bam." And I was like, do I just turn around and walk? They're like, "No, you still got to come with us. There's still paperwork and stuff." But I was like, "Oh, do I just go?" No. And I went back, and then there's paperwork, and then before you know it, you're back in the unit, and they're packing all your stuff, and you're standing there, being like, "Please open this door, open this door. I'm here. There's a copy," and you're just so terrified that they're going to be like, "We're just kidding, come back in here," and the door opens, and you're walking out, and I recall the moment standing there with the officer. And, just having this kind of conversation, and it kind of came back up in place. But I'm like, thinking like, "Hey, where do you see yourself in like 20 years? Those kind of questions. Would have been interesting if he had said that. And I'll tell you why here in just a minute. Anyways, they open the door. I walk out and I'm like scooting. I'm like, come on. And there was one of the deputies there. He was there and he was like, "Cushway." He was like, "Hope I never see you again." And I mean that in the best way. He says, "Best of luck to you." He says, "Just go out there and live a good life." And I was like, "Yes, sir." Just grabbed my stuff and out the door. And I was out, and there it was. God had delivered before 21, and I was out the door. And they give you EBT cards, or not EBT, like debit cards now when you get out of jail. So any money on your books, they give that to you. But back then they wrote checks. So they wrote me a check for 18 cents.
Oh, wow.
So, and I have kept that check either in a frame or in my Bible for years. And, people go, why do you keep that? It's a reminder. It's 3/20/1997, 18 cents, and I've told my story to so many people, and they say, it sounds a little crazy. Like, how'd you get out? You can't be that deep in and just walk out. They just let you out,
Mm-hmm.
Some of the things that you said that you've done, that's pretty crazy, man. Yeah, it is. How'd you survive that? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I tell them, I said, and when I've told these guys in the jails, I said, what another crazy story is It's about a man who lived like 2,000 years ago, and he lived a sinless life, and they crucified him, and he was like dead, and they put him in a stone. And like the next day, like 3 days later, he's arised, he's gone. I was like, that sounds pretty crazy, because that dude literally was dead, but he walked out of the tomb. And I'm telling you that I was literally a dead man walking, and I walked out of that jail cell. I walked out of that tomb, and I'm like, so you might have a hard time believing the Bible. Maybe you don't, completely everything, but I'm walking, talking proof. And I have these stacks of paper that said, this is what he's charged with. You can pull up my record, you can still dig around for it and you can find it. And I'm like, this is what God did for me. This is how God saved me. This is how God brought me to him, drew me to him, allowed me to go through it. And I don't know how it all works, but I know that I'm here. And I mean, like my modern day Lazarus, I was dead, and I was dead in my sins. I was dead in the world, and Jesus Christ saved me, and Jesus Christ brought me out of there. And I would love to tell you that, since 1997 has been a picture perfect road, and I've been a saint and front row of the church. Amen. Hallelujah. But there was ups and downs, and I don't know if y'all got enough time for all that.
My next question was, what does life look like for you now versus the 19-year-old drug dealer Ryan, who was facing 2 death sentences, 3 life sentences? Like, you're married, you're a dad now. So what does that look like as far as like, you grew up without one, and now you're a dad. So, it's pretty awesome. I have a absolutely amazing, beautiful woman who knows my deepest, darkest secrets. She knows just about everything that that no one else ever will, and she's my ride or die chick. That's my Bonnie and Clyde. Not in a bad way, but I mean, right. She's definitely she's my ride or die girl. She's been my rock. Just thinking about her, I love her. We have 2 beautiful children. My daughter Raina just got married last weekend, so I was able to have a life. I was able to be a parent to Raina. I was able to bring her into the church, and it took some struggles. I mean, like Raina will tell you that there was a period of our lives where we were still kind of out in the world. We had this great high, then we had this great low, and then there was all kinds of chaos. But different time for that story. But God brought us back. God literally brought us back, and has allowed us to go through these different seasons. It's definitely, it's mind blowing. And now when I'm a father, my son, he's my world. I love him. He's my little mini me. And he amazes me all the time. He is such an amazer. And, I was putting him to bed one night. We were praying our prayers, and we were talking about, being like God in heaven. He says, "No, he's not, Daddy." I said, "Well, God's not in heaven. Where is he?" He says, "He's right here." And I'm like, so for y'all who can't see, he was pointing to his heart. But, I'm like, what? I sure have messed up so much in life, but, leading this child, to know God, and to pray, and to read. And I'm like, that's good. Yeah. I mean, I'm so grateful. I am that dude who's like, seriously, my life could have been so much different. I honestly, I'll be 45 in just in a few months, and I've had almost 25 years of freedom that other dudes didn't. Mm-hmm. I was actually over in Phillips State Prison, working with Kairos, and I happened to sit at a table with this kid was 19 years old, sitting right beside me, who had 2 armed robbery charges and was doing 30 years. Wow.
you know, and I'm like, oh, that absolutely could have been me, you know. And I tell you, when we got out of there, I broke down. I broke down so hard. I was like, God took me from this place where I was, and has given me this life and revealed himself and saved me. And here I am now, you know, face to face with someone who was in an identical situation as I was. I don't know, kind of like bring it back. And just so grateful, you know, so grateful. Being able to go back into the jails and the ministry and to tell people that, yeah, you know, that God's real, and he loves you and he will save you. Mm-hmm. And I tell people all the time, you know, maybe your story won't be like mine. Maybe you won't, but it doesn't mean that I'm more special than you. It maybe just means that God allowed me to go through what I did so that someday I could come back here and talk to you and tell you that, hey, God did this for me, and he can save you. You know, there is prices to pay for our sins. They will follow us and they will haunt us, but Jesus Christ forgives.
Yeah.
For so long, I was still trying to check off boxes of God, am I good enough now? Am I worthy? No, I ain't ever going to be worthy.
Right.
That is just straight up God's grace, his mercy, his love there is no amount of goodness that I can ever do that will be good enough. Right. You know, all of our righteousness is still as filthy rags. But his grace and his mercy are just way, way, way beyond anything that you can comprehend.
Yeah.
You know, and I look at that, and when I get shined up now, everything, I can look at myself. My heart has been healed. Every now and then I still get a little crazy brained, and you know, some people who know me, I say some things and they're like, "And you're a Christian?" I go, "I know. I gotta work on that. Forgive me." Like, look, my name is Ryan, not Jesus. Okay, he's the perfect one. I'm still I'm the work in progress. Yeah. But I mean, it's amazing, yeah. And to be able to go back and to talk to people, to see people. And the guys that I've been able to witness to testify in front of, it's incredible. Something that I thought was funny that I thought you might also get. Yeah. This is 18 cents.
Yeah.
So we started going to Free Chapel back in, I think, like 2012, maybe 2011, somewhere around there. But I had done the parking lot for a while, but it had been on my heart to get involved with the jail ministry. And that was kind of a scary thing, like going back in, you know, like willingly going back in, being like, hey, I want to go inside. You know, not a whole lot of folks really want to do that. But it had been on my mind and had been on my heart. And eventually I got around to getting the paperwork. But the paperwork stayed in my truck for, I don't know, like a week. And then somehow it got brought inside and got put on the counter. And it had stayed there for several days. And I was coming up the stairs one day, and it was just like the Spirit was just in my ear, like, fill out that paperwork, get on it. And I was like, fine, okay, fine. I was like arguing with the Holy Spirit. And I was like, I'll do it. Okay, get off my back. Jeez. I was like, okay, fine. And I was like, where's the paper? Fine, I'll fill this out and pen. This pen don't work, you know, find another pen. And I'm filling it out. And Ryann Cushway, and I go and fill out the date. And I was like, 3/20, 2015. I was like, no way. And I had to go upstairs and actually look. And I was like, man, the day that I got out, 18 years later, I'm filling out the paperwork to go back in. And I was like, really, man? Come on, God. I mean, like, that's too much. That's over the top. But yeah, so that's I guess that's part of my story.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Before I get to my last question, I just want to say, like, I think it's really great that you came on to share your story. And something I think is, like, really interesting is you talked about how before you couldn't even look at yourself in the eye because you thought you were just this big monster and that you could never be forgiven, and you wanted to die because of how bad life got. And when we were talking the other day about your interview, I had this thought of, 2,000 years ago, Jesus hung on a cross and had nails in his wrists and his feet, knowing you were going to have armed robbery charges, knowing you were going to go to jail, knowing you were going to do these things that you thought made you a monster. And he hung on the cross and he said, for Ryann Cushway, like, I'm doing this. And if I only did it for Ryann Cushway, he would still have done it for you, knowing what you were going to do, And I think that speaks to all of us because he would do it for us. He would do it just for me and all the sins that I've done and all the things that I think make me a bad person, just like he would do it for you. And I know you didn't say this today, but the other day you had said that you felt like there were some things you've done that were unforgivable.
Yeah, there's things in my past that I know that they are forgivable.
Yeah,
and I have certainly begged, pleaded, cried my eyes out for forgiveness. There's some things you can't take back,
right?
And I know that Christ forgives me,
right?
But forgiving myself,
right,
and moving past that, you're going to pay the price for those sins.
Yeah,
and yeah.
It's true. There are consequences to the choices that we make. My dad always says the decisions you make today affect your tomorrow. But also, I think when you ask God for forgiveness, like you said, it's really forgiving yourself. But when you ask God for forgiveness, and you pray to him and you say, like, God, please forgive me for this or that reason or whatever. The Bible says he casts it into the sea of forgetfulness. And so oftentimes what we do is we still dwell on whatever we did that we've already asked him to forgive us for. And he's saying, I already casted that away. Like, I've already forgotten about it. You keep reaching back up and grabbing it and white knuckling it and then coming back to me and saying, God, please forgive me for this. And he's already done it. Like, he's already forgiven you. And so it really is just a simple act of confession. And, I had a guest on this. If forgiveness is already there, you just have to receive it. Mm-hmm. So it's already there for us. He already died for us. You just have to receive that love and confession.
Absolutely. And I know that he has. I mean, I know what Scripture says, and I know what God has said. I just can't forget, and that letting go. And, I don't go back and ask God for forgiveness for things anymore. I know how that part works, but I still, it's still memories.
Yeah.
And that's things that I said, I'm a work in progress. Lord, there are things that have gotten easier to deal with and to cope with over the years. As God has changed my heart, has changed my mind. I told you, I'm not as crazy as I used to be. But there's things that I know that he'll erase with time. There's people who go through traumatic losses or deaths, for any parent who has lost a child, that's something, that your child is in heaven. That they're in a better place. That they are with the Father, that they are happy and that they are safe, but you miss them, something like that.
Yeah.
So, and it's like, hey, I know I'm forgiven. So, it's important to me. And I had an opportunity to work with 3D, 3-dimensional living, with Tim Price, years and years ago. And working with some of those kids, that were in similar situations, as I was, or at least, on the fringes of that world. And, it's like, man, how do we protect them? How do we reach out? And, how do we be a better job? How do we do a better job as, as parents, as a community, as Christians. How do we get back out there? Because it's one thing to be in a church environment with your church family and your church friends, but there's a lot of hurting kids that are out there that are victims of. It's not something that we brought about, but my babysitter when I was young took advantage of me for years. She was messed up in the head, and I was like, she babysit me, and so that skewed my view of sex. There are kids being abused right now. There are kids that are being mistreated. There's drugs and alcohols in homes, and children are faced with that. And it's commonplace. Violence is commonplace, aggression. How do we get back out there to meet people, to talk to them, to really spread the good news? That you might be in a bad situation. You might be in a house of hurt and of anger. It's not a Christian home, but Jesus loves you, and Jesus does have a plan for you. How do we get to there?
Right.
So I don't know. It's trying to figure out God's plan is going to drive you crazy. Sometimes you just got to roll with it, and I'm grateful for the life that I've had. I'm grateful for what He's allowed me to go through, because it certainly is by the grace of God go I.
Yeah.
You want to say something else?
Just my last question for you is this: anybody watching that maybe has gone through something similar, gotten out of jail, is facing jail, something, or prison time or whatever, or the families of those in that type of situation, what would you say to the audience to encourage them, to lift them up, and get them through what they're going through right now?
My mom had always she would always say, guard your heart, guard your mind. What goes into you is what comes out. And I'm not going to be the guy who blames gangster rap on anything like that. No, no one twisted my arm for me to do what it was. I don't think it was, I don't think it was Eazy-E that got me into the game or anything like that. But certainly guard your heart, for people that are still in. Don't sit on the yard and talk about trading war stories about, oh, I did this or I did that, or my girl this or my car. Don't waste your time with that, because there's always going to be another Nino Brown. There's always going to be somebody who's got a bigger story than you, a better story. And I don't want to ever glamorize or say that I was some huge person, because it's not. I was a pawn. I was a pawn in the devil's schemes. I allowed myself to get into a world. I pretty much openly walked into that door. Guard your heart. Protect yourself. Talk to people that are going to be uplifting, that are going to be encouraging to you, that have your best interest. If someone's coming to you, talking to you about Jesus Christ, listen to them, because it's not for their benefit. It's because that person genuinely cares about you, and that person genuinely loves the Lord. So the struggles are real. You're going to face things that's going to be tough. You're going to get out, and there's going to be certain family members that still look at you like, I always knew you were the bad one. You're still going to wake up in the middle of the night, and you're still going to struggle when you're trying to fill out the paperwork to get a job. These are the prices that you pay, but understand that the sun comes up tomorrow. Jesus still loves you, and it's going to be okay. You just have to push and fight. You've made these decisions. You're going to have to get out, but with God on your side, who can be against you? You go back to Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ strengthens me. David went up against Goliath. These people, these men and women who are in these situations, the world is your Goliath, and you're going to have to go out. And sometimes all you got is a rock, but that rock is powerful, because it's the force that's behind that rock.
Yeah.
So you get out there and you grind and you hustle, and you make your way back, and you pay your penance. You pay your debt back to society, and you get back out there and you prove everybody wrong. I like I said, I have worked hard to get to where I am now, and I have had to deal with naysayers and pressure, but the worst has been my own brain. That's been my worst critic. So I just have to go back to God and to His Word. I have to get into service, and I have to listen. I have to listen to when God says, "I did do this for you." I really did do this for you. It's you'll get through it, knowing that the King of Kings, the Alpha, the Omega, the beginning and the end, that He stretched out His arms in love for you. Man, if you can't get through a day knowing that, I don't know. It's definitely a struggle, but the journey is worth it. Someday, if you ever get to be that dude on the other side of the conversation, and you can look at somebody and say, "I know that Jesus loves you because of what He did for me." If you ever get to be in that position to lead somebody else, then every single thing that you did has been worth it. Because I don't care what it cost me, if I can show someone else the glory and love of God and bring that person into repentance and to acceptance of Jesus, then everything's been worth it. The parent who has lost a child, if they can somehow talk to another parent, if it's guys like me who can go back into a jail, who hurt their family, hurt their friends, hurt other people, lied, robbed, stealed, killed. If guys like me and everything that I did can somehow bring somebody else, if I can be the introductory between them and Christ, and everything I did has been worth it. Everything has been worth it. I talk to my mom like every day. Every day. Every now and then we'll miss like on a weekend or something like that or something. But my mom was there, and my mom always, she just always thanks God. And I'm just like, man, God is good. God really is good. God works in miracles. He's still in the business of saving folks. He's still in the miracle business. He still speaks. We just got to listen. Sometimes you just have to literally go into a quiet place that's not Utah or Nevada. Hopefully it's not jail, but you need to find a quiet place to go and listen. So that's my advice.
Thank you so much for watching this week's episode of the Dare to Love podcast. I hope it challenged you and blessed you. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook so you don't miss out on anything that we have going on in the upcoming months. And thank you so much for tuning in to this season of the Dare to Love podcast. It was incredible to film and produce for you guys, and I really hope that wherever you are in the world, it blessed you and God spoke to you through it. Thanks again.